is Stapleton Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.
Hey, and welcome to the Wager Zone. With me, as always, is Dynamite David. We got a lot to talk about.
Yep.
We got some college football to get into. A whole lot of soccer to get into.
Yeah.
Some interesting matchups over the weekend, much better than the last week, especially in the Premier League. We're going to finish up our NFL preview series because the NFL is about to kick back off, and then we'll have a sort of a part 2 special edition show like we had last week with all our NFL futures. So, are you feeling good about your college football futures after 1 week into the season?
Some yes, some not so much, but we'll see how it all shakes out at the end of the season.
All right, so let's kick things off in soccer and sort of touch on our soccer futures and update how they're going as we go into the international break here. Let's skip Friday. Luton Town West Ham sort of played out how you thought it would play out. If they could have gotten any win, it was probably going to be that first win at home, but they didn't. But let's go into Tottenham Burnley. Now, granted, this isn't a high matchup, but Tottenham once again flying. Son takes over for Charleston in the middle, gets a hat trick. Tottenham is probably right now, other than maybe Brighton, the best team to watch in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Are Tottenham now a real threat to make it in that top 4, you think? Defensively, still a little shady. This game could have been 9-5, 9-6, as it was 5-2.
They're kind of their schedule was weak at the beginning, and so they've been playing a lot of teams that they should be scoring goals on, and they've been winning games. I'm interested to see if they can keep getting these 3, 4, 5 goals when they start playing the likes of Brighton and City and some of these other teams, but
Manchester United, though, we'll get to them later.
So I mean, if this is their game plan to just outscore, if they're going to go kind of like a Liverpool and Arsenal and just score, I mean it's working for them now. They look really great on offense, but they're still just give up goals really easily.
Burnley could have scored more. Now, that being said, Tottenham could have scored more too. There were opportunities galore, which is at least fun to watch, especially from what we've watched Tottenham be the last couple years.
Last year, Tottenham was just a snooze fest. So this year, it's becoming a lot better.
I think that helps too, sort of cover up some of the defensive warts. At least you're entertained here and not watching a team sit back.
Well, and you have a better shot at a draw if you can at least score goals.
Yeah. So let's say you can go back. Tottenham top 4 bet. Would you be confident in it? More confident than you probably were at the start of the year?
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely think they're one of the teams, especially with Newcastle kind of showing where they're at. I think I would trade them.
Yes.
And so, we'll get to them here in a minute as well.
Well, I think we'll get to 2 teams that we might be bumping down from the top 4. We'll start off. I think we were both a little angry because I think earlier that morning we were both sort of like hinting and hawing that we wanted to take Nottingham Forest, and we just couldn't do it. And lo and behold, we should have taken Nottingham Forest because this basically played out like I don't know, every Chelsea game we've seen for the last year and a half. Lots of possession, 2 or 3 opportunities that were very badly missed. Forrest finds a goal, game over, 1-0. I just think this is what Chelsea is. Nothing they've shown this year other than beating Luton at home with a couple goals, which I totally just earmark. Everything has been a struggle to get goals for this Chelsea team.
This was a team I thought that, some of their purchases and spending over the offseason would be one of the teams to change for the better this year, and they've proven me wrong there. If anything, they may be worse this year. Especially, losing at home to Forest. That's just unacceptable. I mean, Forest has got 2 wins on the season already, 4 games in. That's really solid.
Yeah, I know. And a road win.
Speaking of, I think Forest may be competing for top half.
That's what I was going to ask. All right,
and they're making moves too.
Forest has played 4 games now. They probably should have gotten something out of that Man United game. We'll get into the coach complaining about officiating later on. That's pot calling the kettle black. But I don't think Forest can get in that top 6. Probably not even top 8. But this is a pretty good team.
Yeah.
I think we both watched them.
Yeah.
Pretty much all 4 games this year and been like, they're kind of good.
Well, and, if they're one of those teams, if, they just keep building year over year and slowly start creeping up. I mean, their first couple years, they hung around right at the bottom of the table, but they're slowly starting to move back up. And, if they keep this momentum and they're willing to spend,
I've been impressed by Forest. It's now not one of those where I'm just going to be real aggressive taking against them. We weren't quite there taking for them on the road versus Chelsea, but I think we're starting to grow into it.
Yeah.
Chelsea probably the perfect fodder. I don't know if I can make myself take them out of Liverpool or not, but probably should have grabbed that one when we could. But Nottingham Forest definitely up. On the other end, Newcastle somehow the 2 weeks before spiraled into an even worse performance. 3-1 doesn't even do this justice. Their cheap little goal in the dying seconds of the game. Brighton
just total domination.
Lit them up.
Well, you could tell Brighton was pissed after that game last week against West Ham, and they took it out on Newcastle.
Yeah. I think the first text message I sent you, because I talked to you last week about Eddie Howe, was, are we sure he's safe? Because, I think you can talk away the other 2 performances, even though maybe the style of play is not what you want. And I think everybody knows Brighton's a good team, but this was just... Brighton not only was the good team, they looked like the better team in every level of play.
There was it wasn't competitive.
In the midfield and offensively. And, even if you ask me right now, I would tell you Brighton probably going to finish ahead of Newcastle. Now, they're on the break. Maybe they come back, retool. This is probably your most difficult stretch of games. You played right here. Man City, Liverpool, Brighton. It doesn't get much harder than that. But, other than that Aston Villa win that they had at the start of the year, they've been just bad. Basically as bad as anybody that we've seen play at the bottom of the table here.
Yeah, I think they're going to,
not entertaining to watch, which last year they were entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I'm thinking after this international break, if they don't get some momentum going, we could start to see some changes. But I think, their schedule will become a little bit more favorable. Yeah. So hopefully you'd see some changes there and maybe get some wins and get some points on the table. But, if they don't turn things around after this break, watch out for some firings, I think. Yeah,
I think next week with the international break, we'll do a little bit of the Champions League group breakdown. They didn't get any favors in that draw either, so should be an interesting couple months here for Newcastle. Let's flip things over to Liverpool. I think this is the most complete Liverpool performance I think either of us have seen since, 2 years ago when they were contending for that treble.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel a little bit better about the futures I had on Liverpool because I think me and you both had some plays on them top 4 finishes, I think, and they're starting to look like it. They're playing better. They're getting goals and getting some momentum.
Yeah. We haven't gotten into Arsenal yet, but let's knock Man City off and just put them atop. They aren't even playing well and are crushing teams, 3-1, 5-1. But for that 2 spot to say the contender to try to challenge Man City, would you rather have Liverpool or Arsenal right now?
Liverpool, no question, hands down. I'd almost halfway be tempted to take Tottenham over Arsenal right now.
Yeah, we'll get to that game here in a second. One thing on Villa, I'm getting a little nervous here. Bunima got out right before the season started. Then Tyrone Mings blows out his knee. And then this game, you saw Diego Carlos. So they're basically down 3 of their top sort of 4 guys that defend / cover the middle of the field. They didn't present much here. Going to Liverpool, always a difficult thing, but I'm getting a little worried bodies-wise. Where I thought Villa could maybe be an outside contender for that top 6 without that defensive, and now having to put people that are not on that high-end level into your defense. This could get a little ugly. I doubt they'll go into like a relegation battle, because the 2 weeks before you saw them play low-level teams and they sort of wiped the floor with them. But I think it's going to be difficult now to sort of contend for one of those top 6 spots.
I think at this point they're just probably going to ride through the season.
See if you could get in the top half.
Yeah, I had some plays on them finishing kind of near the top as well in our futures, and I'm a little disappointed. But as long as they don't lose to the teams they should beat, I think they're going to make it through. But I don't think...
And always tough to go there to play on the road.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to see anything special out of this season.
Just bad luck to sort of start the year. It's not one of those teams like a Man City who can just start, half your team's hurt, and the next half comes in and it's still top 25 players in the league. They've lost 3 guys now who are probably 3 of their top 6 guys. That becomes difficult to sort of balance out. So we'll see if Villa can sort of recoup after the break. Probably the biggest game of the weekend, and probably the rivalry the Premier League built, granted in a time when both these teams were a little better. Arsenal Man United, it wasn't really a bad game.
It's a lot closer than the score would indicate, for sure.
Just, I think you saw...
I'm not impressed by either one of these teams.
You saw both these teams. I mean, you basically watch Man United play like Sheffield United and sit back the whole game and just try to counter once in a while. Now, once Højlund got in there, it got a little better. And Arsenal, it's not as bad as Chelsea, but it's a lot of passing without much function up front.
Well, it's not a game you watch and you're like, oh, yeah, these are 2 of the best teams in the Premier League. No, I mean, you would think you'd be watching some middle-of-the-road teams that are scared to win or scared to lose, just, not taking chances.
Well, I'm a little afraid that might be what Manchester United is.
Yeah.
We'll give them a chance to get Højlund in there. Like I said, that last 20 or so minutes when he got in there, they at least seemed like they wanted to go forward, but that's asking a lot of a 20-year-old who barely played in the Serie A last year.
I have a little bit more hope for Arsenal than United, especially with them getting Gabriel de Jesus back. That's going to make a difference. I mean, heck, it definitely, got it there at the end. But, this game is a lot closer than the 3-1. Not really either team is impressive, but Man U definitely more in the panic, especially since they've got the 2 losses. So we'll see where it goes. But I honestly, I could see both of these teams not in the top 4.
Yeah. I'm going to hold off on Arsenal a little bit. They did make the change back to a normal back 4, but they still kept Havertz on there. And other than whiffing on a kick early in the game, it just looks like a body out there. A $70 million body, but that needs to be adjusted. It's been 4 games. He started 4 games. Arsenal hasn't looked anything like, what they look like in the Premier League last year. I can't say that's all related to Kai Havertz, but it's got to be something. Speaking of struggling top-tier teams, Friday, Dortmund played the aforementioned Heidenheim, who was playing in the localized 5th tier of German football, 20 years ago. That's basically like a Y League they were in. Now, they've managed to move their way up, but Dortmund at home on a Friday night, up 2-0 in the first 15 minutes of the game, comes away 2-2. I mean, we talked about it a little last week. Panic button time in Dortmund. I think now it becomes real panic button time. And I mentioned Eddie Howe, coaching-wise, on the hot seat. I know they should have probably won the Bundesliga last year, but this team looks like a mid-tier Bundesliga team right now.
Not looking great. Struggling to get, they got goals early. One was off of a penalty, and then giving up just cheap goals, and
hell, by the end of it,
they were hanging on for the draw.
Heidenheim looked more like they were getting the goal than Dortmund.
Yeah, and they're another team that got a pretty tough Champions League draw that I don't know if they can make it out of their group. So it'll be interesting to see where they kind of put their focus. Are they going to try to advance in Champions League, or are they going to try to stay near the top tier in Bundesliga? Because I think it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a handful of teams I would take over Dortmund in Bundesliga.
Yeah, from what I've seen, you mix that with Jude Bellingham, it looks like that. Dortmund's always been a team who's been able to sell, their young players off and just keep replacing the young players. It seems like they're missing Jude Bellingham a whole lot, especially since he's basically carrying Real Madrid to a win every week now. But I'm very, very nervous for Dortmund because Bayern Leverkusen, Darmstadt, say what you will, but I think in years past, this is a game where we get something like we saw with Dortmund, where Leverkusen scores 2 goals in the first 15 minutes, turns off, and, somehow ends up in a tie in a team they're way, way better in. They just took Darmstadt apart. They've taken everybody apart since they've started this season. So I'm getting more and more impressed with Leverkusen here. We talked about it. How aggressive would you sort of be? We talked about doing a 3-tier bet on Europa League, the German Cup, and in the Bundesliga, and taking them to win, and you could probably hit one of those 3. Yeah. I think they were all about 16-1 there.
Well, I think I've seen some to win Bundesliga were closer to 31-1, but both Europa and German Cup were about 14-15-1, which is really good value because the way they're playing right now, I put them right up there with Munich. Boniface looked amazing against Darmstadt. Like, he can create on his own, get some goals, which is what Leverkusen's been needing, and I'm really impressed, and I think they're going to be right there.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I haven't done it because we got that international break. I might start throwing a little bit of money on that. I think they can contend with this Munich team. Munich.
Speaking of.
They always struggle in Gladbach. Wasn't pretty, but I think last year they don't get this win. This year they got, the win here. We get this Leverkusen-Munich game right when we get back from the break. We'll talk about it probably more when it's coming up, but how important do you think it is? I think it's really important to sort of lay down a marker for Leverkusen here to try to take this win from Munich because Munich doesn't need it. They lose the game and be like, we'll end up winning it in the end. Yeah. But I think if Leverkusen could go there, at least get some sort of point or a win out of it, I think we got game on. That's why I'm saying look at that future now.
Yeah.
Take it now, because if Leverkusen goes in that game and wins it,
they'll be cut in half.
It'll be dropped.
Yeah, they'll drop. Like, if they can go in and win at Munich, I'd say that almost 30-1 to win Bundesliga. It probably drops at least to 15, and then Europa and German Cups probably goes down to like 6-7 to 1.
Yeah, I think so for sure.
Good value. I'll probably lock some of those in this week, I think. But also probably look at some plays in that game as well. I think, definitely see both to score the way these teams are playing. May look at some over pyramids. But I'm excited for that match. Yeah. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, that one's going to be one I'm pumped for. Other team I wanted to talk about in the Bundesliga, RB Leipzig. Other than that sort of loss to Leverkusen, continues to play well. Went to Union Berlin, won 3-0, dominated that game pretty well. They had control for much of the game, which is difficult to do. So I think Leipzig, maybe not as much of a contender as Leverkusen. They're playing good football as well. Yeah,
they're playing really well, especially on the defensive side of things. I was a little disappointed that Union got that red card. It was a stupid, no need for that play, and it took them out of the game. Yeah, it was 1-0, and Leipzig was dominating, but that's sort of the game that Union can sneak that goal and come away with a tie, and once they got that red card, it was done. It was over, and then Leipzig put them away there at the end. Yeah. But I think Leipzig, right now, they're looking better than Dortmund. I give them that. So that's 3 teams we've talked about that we've got above Dortmund, and I'd even look at Stuttgart and maybe a couple others. Yeah, and sit in better position. I'll say Stuttgart's played really, really well to start the year. Bundesliga, really, really entertaining. What hasn't been entertaining all that much has been La Liga. We won't talk much about it. Real Madrid
sneaks away another win because of Jude Bellingham. We mentioned it. I thought Barcelona once again looked terrible, and that was against Osasuna's B team. I have my own rant about that. They benched 9 of their guys because they played a Conference League game on Thursday. So, heaven forbid they play their guys 2 days off rest going into an international break where they all got 15 days off.
We got another Lewandowski goal.
We did get another Lewandowski goal, kind of penalty, but he did draw the penalty, so at least it was there. I didn't think they looked good, but good win over Osasuna's B team. Still a little salty on why we can't play our full team, but that's La Liga. It is what it is. Nothing else. Madrid, Sevilla got postponed for weather. That's probably for the best for everybody not to view that game. Sevilla's been awful, and Atletico Madrid, they scored 7 goals, so that probably means we're getting 0 goals for a 2-week stretch. But not much else. Syria went basically on form. I thought Inter dominated, Juventus dominated, Fiorentina sold off a handful of their guys. I don't think they're going to be contending anymore. And then the French league.
PSG's winning again.
Yes,
so.
They're going to be good again.
Yeah.
Granted, Monaco, entertaining football, I think can hang around. It should be entertaining to watch those two play. But let's flip things over to the college side of things. The season kicked off on Thursday. I wouldn't say a ton of great material. Utah, Florida, 24-11.
Yeah.
Utah's quarterback didn't play. They handled the game pretty well. I thought Florida played okay for what it was going to Utah, but this just sort of, it played like it was supposed to be scripted this way.
Yeah, I wasn't as impressed with Florida as what you were. I thought they played slow on defense, and even despite that, Utah left the door open most of this game when they should have dominated and put it away very early. So I guess you can give Florida credit for hanging with them a little bit. But, big win for Utah. But I'm interested to see what happens when they get their quarterback back, see how good they look then. They didn't look like a national championship team against Florida. But they got the win. We'll see how they navigate the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, and we'll see how Florida goes. Nebraska, Minnesota. Do we want to say anything?
Terrible Big Ten football.
Both teams looked awful. Nebraska's done what they've basically done for the last, 4 or so years. Friday, there wasn't a ton of big-time games going on.
Michigan State took care of business.
Dominated Miami of Ohio. Michigan State. Stanford got one of their wins, so I'm 2 wins away from my over there. Let's go into Saturday. Before we kick that in, I have to say I'm already sick of listening to announcers and the big wins that all these teams do. I go into my rant every year. I hate preseason rankings. We just get stupidity. And, Colorado, good win at TCU. But, we don't know how good TCU is. Just because TCU was good last year, it does not mean they're good this year.
I think they brought back 2 players from their entire starting defensive roster last year.
And it looked like it.
And then they lost their quarterback. I mean, this is a team that had a lot of changeover, and it's not like TCU's a perennial powerhouse.
Yes.
They have good years where they pop up and are good, but they also have down years. This is going to be one of their down years. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on Colorado here. But, that's not going to happen because the media loves Dion.
Yeah. Good win.
Yeah.
And they played well.
The other thing I must say about Colorado, they're like 2 players. If one of them gets an injury, their season's done.
I think their season's pretty much done to begin with. But it's not just that. It's the Clemson-Duke game and the Duke storming because they got a big win over a top 10 team. Did anyone watch that game and think Clemson was a top 10 football team? It also drives me a little nuts, preseason rankings, because then it sort of decides the whole season. What if we had put Duke at number 9? They just beat Clemson, so why can't they be number 9?
We wait till halfway through the season before we do our first playoff ranking.
Yes.
Why don't we just wait and not run a poll till like week 6, 7, 8? There's no point. I mean, but they like it because they can.
It shows fancy on TV. I get it.
They can sell games.
But guess what? Colorado TCU, I would have watched no matter who was ranked or not ranked. Clemson Duke, I probably wouldn't have watched no matter who's ranked or not ranked, and I watched a little bit of it. Preseason rankings drive me nuts. And I'm sure next year I will come back on and bitch about them some more. It's stupid to rank teams before you've seen them. All right, couple teams I wanted to talk about. Washington, Boise State. Boise State looked a lot like they did last year. They have really good players, but they also give up a whole lot of explosive pace. I don't know how much of that is Washington, because I will say I was really, really impressed with Washington's offense.
I wasn't expecting this. I had Boise State plus the spread, and Washington just come out and dominated. Penix looked like he's going to compete for a Heisman. This is definitely a team that's going to compete in the Pac-12.
I think so as well. I'm impressed with the way Washington came out. Offense looked good. Defense was a little hot and cold. I thought Boise moved the ball on them, but did a handful of stupid things. And then once that got out of hand, we mentioned Colorado TCU. Good win to go into TCU by Colorado.
It was also a close game, too.
Yes.
We're talking a lot about Colorado here in a game that they really had to play amazing to eke out a win against a team that might only win 5 or 6 games this year.
That's what I think we're talking about. A TCU. We mentioned it in our preview. TCU,
I think we both had unders on them.
TCU had a lot of sort of Gary Patterson DNA left in it on the defensive side of the ball. As that year went on, it started to erode and erode and erode, and by the time you got in the playoffs, they weren't stopping anybody. They were in the normal game, and this sort of continued the trend of where they play shootouts, last ball wins. TCU had the ball last, but couldn't win. Now, I also think if you watch that game, TCU was trying to hold on to that ball to score and leave no time on the clock, which might have sort of held them back a little bit because I think they knew if they gave Colorado the ball back, they were going to drive down and score. Bad defense, really bad defense from both sides.
Yeah.
Other things, North Carolina, South Carolina. I don't know if this is, South Carolina being bad. I will say this. North Carolina's offense always looks good. Yeah. But I thought their defense looked normal, which is an improvement over what I've seen from North Carolina.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson from the past. I'm going to take it slow jumping on this North Carolina bandwagon.
No, it's week 2. This is where you usually like to go a very large
Well, we'll see what my picks are here tomorrow. But, I don't think you could really take a whole lot out of this game other than these teams are kind of what you expected them to be. I think I expected a little bit more competition from South Carolina here, but, Rattler actually played a really solid game. I think he had something like 77% completion rate and he threw for over 350 yards. But North Carolina's offense was better, and South Carolina struggled to finish drives. But we'll see what – I don't think I would rate South Carolina's offense in a top tier, and they played okay defensively against North Carolina. This is a team that's going to score a lot of points year long, but I still think this North Carolina team can find themselves in a situation where they lose a game in a shootout because that's what they do.
Yeah, I think I sort of moved Carolina up a tick in my head and dropped maybe South Carolina a little bit.
Yeah, we saw things that we liked from South Carolina this year. I don't know if they're going to improve on that. I think if they
looked similar to last
year. They may be able to repeat what they did last year. They may fall back a game or two.
All right, let's get to the game I was off on, Tulane, South Alabama.
Yeah.
Speaking of ticks, I move up. I watched pretty much this whole game. I'm moving Tulane up probably about 3 ticks.
Their quarterback looks amazing.
Their offense was possibly the most efficient machine I have seen. Their quarterback was literally just throwing darts 20, 25, 30 yards down the field. And their defense, which is actually what I was a little worried about, looked pretty solid. Now, once again, we don't know what South Alabama is. Last year, they were a very good team. I think this is a very good win. They did not show it this year, so it's hard to give that grade, but I was impressed from what I saw.
You go back 2 years ago, South Alabama was terrible.
Yes.
Was last year the outlier, and now are they going to regress back to the norm this year? So I'm tempted to go big Tulane week 2 at home against Ole Miss. I'm curious. I haven't looked yet to see what that point over is. I guarantee it's at least 70.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some scoring in this game. But I maybe look for an SEC team to go down on the road week 2.
Yeah, I was looking at it, but then all I've been hearing on every podcast I hear
Tulane.
is the sleeper Tulane, and I'm like, well, if everybody is putting money on Tulane, it's not really a sleeper.
Maybe we look for a points play instead of picking a side there.
But, well,
and we wondered what Tulane was going to be because they lost some guys to the NFL off that team last year, and they showed that they haven't lost any steam.
Yeah, it wasn't offensively. I knew they'd be highly efficient on offense. I was impressed defensively by what they did. It continued from last year's team that was able to compete defensively with good football teams. A couple other games to touch on: Fresno State, Purdue. Fresno State went in there and won.
Yeah.
I think it happened the way we thought. Better football coach goes in and wins a game.
Yeah, I think people have forgotten that Tedford's still at Fresno State. A great, probably Hall of Fame college coach, and going into a brand new coach at Purdue with just a bad team there. I had that pick, but the way that spread was, I was kind of confused on that one.
Yeah, I think it was just more of a home type thing. I was going to do a deep dive on Akron Temple, but you denied that. Both those teams aren't very good. Let's see here. Anything else Saturday? There wasn't a ton. UT San Antonio, Houston. Yeah. I think that did not play out how any of us thought.
I had a parlay going that if UTSA just gets the win there, I'm about $1,000 richer, I missed that one.
Did you have defensive struggle, UTSA Houston?
Well, considering in my picks I had the over, and I think it was at 60, missed that one by just a little bit.
I think you needed to take the alternate line under 30 on that one. Not a great performance to start out the gate for UT San Antonio.
Yeah, I think big bounce back this week in a game they're going back home, and hopefully they can right the ship. That was a non-conference game now. So
I will say it was impressive the way their defense held the team. So, something they didn't do a whole lot last year. So if that defense comes and the offense finds its place, they might be all right.
I may be eating crow on Houston, though, because they looked semi-okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's how Dana Holgerson planned it out. But if they're a hard-nosed, bullish team, maybe that's how
I would have had money on him being the first coach fired.
Yeah. Well, he probably won't now. Cal scored 58 points. Now, I remember Saturday morning I texted you, I like the Cal team total over 55. You didn't take it. I don't think anybody took it.
I had North Texas.
Because I don't even think they scored 55 total points all of last year. So,
and this was a road game.
Yeah, what do you... I don't want to deep dive this game too much, but that's... 58 from Cal is pretty impressive.
Are we going to lock in some futures on Cal?
They've always been able to compete defensively. If they can score 50 points,
Pac-12 champion Cal. What's that line at the moment?
Well, it's probably a lot. I think that pretty much does it for Saturday. Texas State went into Baylor and won. I think we can probably mark Baylor off. I'm curious how long that coach sort of gets a life. Texas Tech went to Wyoming 35-33. I think that shocked some. It never shocks me. You don't mess around and go into Laramie. Bad things happen. Coastal Carolina, UCLA. It's sort of the UCLA performance. It's not what you think in your head from Chip Kelly, but it's a football game win, 27-13. I didn't think Coastal looked great, but UCLA got the win. Sunday, the marquee game, another one where everybody is now Florida State is going to win the national championship. Granted, I thought Jordan Travis looked ridiculously
I think they're
awesome.
definitely, you could call them the best team in the ACC.
Yes. Right now, they would be my favorite in the ACC. 45-24, dominant second half from Florida State.
Yeah.
We'll see if this can continue. It's a continuance from the second half surge they had last.
Well, see, I kind of was leaning Florida State the whole way because I wasn't as big on LSU preseason like a lot of the media was. I didn't quite understand the hype. Everybody loves Jaden Daniels. Yes, he's an okay athlete. I don't know where he falls in as a drive leader on this team.
We got the Jaden Daniels experience. It was a dud today. Next week it might be 300 with 4 touchdowns.
But this isn't a team that's going to run through the gauntlet in SEC, and I'm not a big fan of Brian Kelly. He's terrible in big game situations, terrible in bowl games, terrible in playoff games, and this is another big game situation that I think a lot of this game was coaching. Poor coaching performance in this one.
Yeah, I just thought Florida State looked like the better team and the better football team won. It's, once again, one of those ranking things. If no one saw LSU had a 5 by their name and FSU had an 8 by their name, we would have watched the game and been like, Florida State is the better football team here. We'll touch on Northwestern Rutgers. Rutgers won. Northwestern looks really, really bad. Speaking of teams who might not score 55 points all year long, granted, they did sneak that touchdown in with about 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter. But I think we'll combine these two because Oregon State, granted, San Jose State, not exactly the toughest of tough competition, but DJ, quarterback, looked like the quarterback we saw, 3 years ago when he was a freshman. And Clemson looked like Clemson basically has looked for the last 2 years. They can't score points.
Yeah, I honestly, they started to find points at the end of last year, and then they fire their offensive coordinator. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, and they try to implement a new system. Klubnik looked like he was starting to catch on to the system last year, which has led to DJ Uiagalelei moving on to Oregon State. And then this new system, Klubnik doesn't look like he's competent, and they could barely get any points on the board.
Yeah, maybe.
And DJ puts up 3 touchdowns and 200-something yards at Oregon State.
And rushes for a bunch more. Anyway, Oregon State offense looked good. Maybe a shift Jonathan Smith down to Clemson or not. I like him at Oregon State. But, I mean, I guess it's a little shocking, maybe the score totality.
Yeah.
28-7, but I wasn't stunned they lost. That's why when you were talking to me about the game, I was like, I'm not touching it because I want to see what Clemson is.
Yeah, I didn't end up making a play on this one. I was leaning more Clemson. I'm glad I didn't take a play, but I really looked at this game and I was like, anything could happen here.
Yeah.
I couldn't really predict it, and like
Yeah, Clemson is pretty much what they are. They have to hold you under 20 points because I don't think they can easily get to 20 points.
It's going to show that, Dabo's more of a recruiter than a coach, and if he doesn't have a generational talent at quarterback, I don't know if
running back. That's
I don't know if he
or
can win.
Receivers. It's basically nothing on offense is of elite, and it doesn't even seem like he can find that because if DJ continues to progress and show he's the quarterback that everybody thought he was, I think it's going to open more questions. That closes. It wasn't a great.
No, there wasn't a
college football.
I was really actually kind of disappointed, and especially with when they had the games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Saturday was actually a really light slate of college football, and I was kind of disappointed. I watched the Tennessee game obviously early, and then I was like, okay, now what to watch?
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, I guess I'll watch South Alabama Tulane.
I think
which was a good game, but there wasn't big marquee matchups. We get a little bit better in week 2, but. I didn't like the spread out, but we've got NFL coming up, so hopefully it'll condense it down and make the day a little bit better.
Yeah, I think so. It was one of those days where I watched a lot of games, but I didn't feel like I could get up and go and come back and get up and go and come back and sort of get the gist. So I think week 2 might be a little better. hopefully it'll be a little better betting-wise for me. I did make some of that up, at least on the Florida State game.
Yeah.
Granted, that's what happens when you have 5 days of college football and 1 day of show. You can't necessarily make all your decisions on that. Let's switch gears here and close out our NFL previews because we're about to get into the NFL season, and we're going to start out with what I think is probably the best division in football, the AFC North. Really, I think all 4 of these teams are really good football teams.
Yeah.
You can tell me any one of them could win this division.
Mm-hmm.
You could talk me into if things break right. Any of them could maybe go to the Super Bowl too. So it's depth on every one of these. Let's kick things off with the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been sort of the best team in this division for about a 2-year run. Not much change up, a couple different spots here and there. SimGP Ryan goes out, so it's all mixing. A couple defensive guys left, but you still have your sort of core of Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Boyd. Offensive line question marks, but you still got Hendrickson, back there echoing the line on the defensive side of the ball. A couple good linebackers for Cincinnati. How do you think they're going to progress? I feel like, especially with the injury to Burrow that they've been sort of I feel like this could be a Bengals team that starts a little slow, a lot like last year, and sort of progresses as the year goes on.
Well, it's like you said, this team isn't really presenting any new challenges to their opponents. They're basically rolling the dice with the same team they've rolled with the last couple of years for the most part. Now it's been a good team. It got them to a Super Bowl. Yes. And sometimes just games got to break your way. They didn't really break their way last year. Maybe stuff goes their way this year. But, it all hinges on Burrow's health. They got to keep him healthy. Doesn't look like it's going to prevent his game time, but we'll see if that lingers or hangs around. Not a whole lot of changes here. I think they didn't really improve a whole lot defensively. Mixon, I think he took some kind of small 1-year deal, so he's happy.
I think that's the spot I'm interested in on the offensive side of things.
He's had injury issues in the past.
They've lost P. Ryan. He's had injury. He has a couple off the field issues, but he's basically had that his whole life. And I thought he wasn't all that great last year. He was good, but I wonder if there's a little bit more sort of, he's at his running back limit where he's no longer great, and they don't have a ton of depth behind him. So I wonder if that hurts them a little bit, especially with, their offensive line.
Yeah.
That's, it was better than it was 2 years ago, but I don't think we'd call it something great. So that concerns me a little bit, but when you have Higgins, Chase, and Boyd out there, you could sort of play around it and you could still sort of dump it off to him. But I think the Bengals will be solid, but it wouldn't stun me if they didn't win the division this year. Like I said, I think this division is just going to be sort of hell to go through, and it's kind of going to be like who plays who at the right time than, having one team that's better than all the rest. Let's go to the biggest wild card here, the Cleveland Browns. Basically, everything on their team is really, really good except for
execution
and whatever you're going to get from the quarterback position.
Yeah.
If it's, Watson from, 3 years ago, I think this is a legitimate team that could easily win this division and be a, top-tier team in the AFC. If it's Deshaun Watson from what we saw those last sort of 10 games last year, it gets a little bit more dicey because I think defensively this team's one of the best defenses in the league. They have weapons on offense. They probably have the best running back in the league now in Nick Chubb. You got Cooper, you got Peoples-Jones, you got Elijah Moore, you got Njoku. Their line is really, really good, especially on the interior and defensively, with Garrett and Smith. And I think this could be a really good team, but the Watson's a question mark.
Yeah, I think we'll see some improvement from Watson this year. I've been eyeballing this tight end in fantasy and David Njoku. I think he actually was one of Watson's favorites when Watkins came in the into last year. And I think the combination of a strong run game and a strong tight end, he may not have amazing weapons at wide receiver. I think Cooper's still pretty solid. So I think we'll see a step up in offense, and I think they're going to see some more wins this year and be competitive in this division.
I think the thing about this team is it's probably the one in the division where it could win 4 games, it could win 12 games, where I think all the rest you can pretty much say are going to be between 8 to 12 wins.
I think one concern on this team is health and depth. Because outside of their starting guys, they really lack a little bit of depth. Especially if Watson goes out, I worry about this team. So
yes, that's correct. But we'll see. Should be an interesting year with Cleveland. We'll probably know sort of early where they are and how Watson's playing. Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens.
Lamar got his contract.
Granted, he didn't get the Deshaun Watson contract, but who does? Interesting sort of, they've sort of totally rebuilt the offense here. New offensive coordinator. They probably actually have receivers.
Yeah, Beckham Jr.'s in. The draft pick, Zy Flowers. Theoretically, Rashad Bateman, who I've really liked for 2 years. When he's been on the field, he's been a really, really good receiver. It was really the last time Minnesota had offense in college football that Bateman was on that team. But you got that. Theoretically, a healthy J.K. Dobbins. Although he's been kind of mid holdout. I don't know.
I said theoretically.
Yeah, he's looks like he's going to play now, but I don't think he's happy.
Yes.
So he's definitely wanting a deal. Maybe that is incentivizing him to play better.
But I don't worry too much about the Ravens running game. They always have 3 or 4 backs.
Yeah.
Plus, you have Lamar Jackson, who is there. Andrews, I think defensively, they've already started to have injuries with Humphrey and a couple of the other guys. It started to get a little bit old last year, too. Now they've let a couple of those guys go, and Campbell, a couple of the other guys. Granted, they had to sign Clowney, which is everybody's sort of emergency pull lever if you need to get a pass rush and you're out of bodies.
Yeah, he has motivation issues.
But I think offensively this will be a really, really good team. If the defense can sort of get healthy by mid-season, I think they could be up there.
My question is, Jackson's been a weapon, but he's getting older.
Yeah.
And can he improvise as much? Because I think this offensive line isn't very strong.
No.
They're okay. They're not the best. They're not the worst. No. They're kind of middle-road offensive line. But, he can make plays. I'm interested to see what he can do if there's a breakdown, if he can still make the spectacular plays like he did in his MVP year. I'm not a big fan, but we'll see what he can do. I just worry about health and depth on this team as well.
I think that's where you worry, and that's where the defensive injuries that have already started to mount.
Yeah.
You get a little worried. I think we're going to see the maximum capabilities of this offense. If the new offensive coordinator can do it, we'll see if the Ravens can move. But, even if the Ravens are bad, they're sort of like the Steelers, where they're going to win their 8 to 10 games.
Yeah, well-coached team.
Every year.
Yeah.
And we go to the Steelers, same sort of thing. But I'm a little bit bigger on this Steelers team.
I am too.
I think this Steelers team could be really, really good. Their question mark, of course, is Pickett. I don't think you need like a high-end quarterback level from Pickett. You just need a productive quarterback who won't turn it over and can get the ball to their guys like Pickens, like Johnson, drop it off to Harris or Jalen Warren when they need to, and then let this defense and the pass rush sort of take over and dominate games.
I think he could step up and fill what Roethlisberger was to this team. They never...
End of the career, Roethlisberger.
Yeah, he could create some, but it does. You use the talent, the coaching around you, because Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches in the NFL. I think he always has been, always produced at no matter what he has.
The last couple of years, managing to get to 500 with some of those teams that were just brutally terrible. It was amazing, and I think this is the first chance in a couple of years where they have some talent to sort of match. And I think they're sort of a dark horse. Not to give away any too many futures, but I think this is a little bit of a dark horse.
But
this
I
division.
would not be shocked to see Pickett move into the top 10 quarterback role.
Yeah, I could definitely see that because there's a cutoff around 7 or 8.
And I think if they get that from him, watch out. This team can be very competitive, especially when you get to the nitty-gritty of the playoffs where anything can happen. This team is built for playoffs.
Yes, I think so, and we might see that a little bit in my futures. All right, that gives give me a winner for the AFC North. Probably the hardest division to pick, I think. And I think that reflected in the odds because I think everybody was in and around 200.
Give me Bengals to win, and then Steelers first wild card.
Steelers first wild card.
I right there, game back of the Bengals.
I think I'm going to lean towards the Steelers because I think the Bengals will get off to too slow a start and they'll sneak in the wild card. Honestly, when we get to my there's a possibility all 4 of these teams might sneak into the wild card, especially if a couple injuries happen in like the AFC East. We're about to get to the AFC South where, interesting, I'd say. 2 teams starting rookie quarterbacks, 1 team who probably won't have the quarterback that's playing quarterback next year, and then Jacksonville, who seems to be everybody's darling this year, but you never know. You got the jump last year, mostly because Urban Meyer was not there, and I think a monkey could have taken over that situation and gotten improvement. The type of improvement they did was impressive. Adding Calvin Ridley, I think, was a nice move. And you look at this, and now they got some nice pass catchers out there. I thought Christian Kirk was really, really good last year. Add Ridley. Jones, Ingram, got ATN in the backfield. Lawrence continues to progress. The line, still a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
But
more than a little bit, I think.
Yes, probably so. But I think that's what you have the young quarterback for. He can sort of move around and avoid that issue. Now, 3 or 4 years from now, he might have this status where he says, we're bringing in some guys who can block for me. Defensively, it's sort of hot and cold because there are guys on this defense that I love, and at times it looks like a dominant defense, and then at times it looks just like it's hard to sort of put them down because they have guys who I think are really, really sort of elite defenders, but sometimes they just give up a ton of yards. Sometimes they reach that potential.
Yeah, well, this team's definitely going to benefit. Very manageable schedule, to say the least, especially looking at the division opponents. Yes. But I think you're going to see Lawrence take another step, which may help him overcome the deficiencies at offensive line a little bit more. They picked up a couple more weapons at receiver. He's really going to have options to move it around between Ingram, Ridley, Kirk, Jones. Hopefully ETN can have a full, healthy season this year. Like you said, their defense isn't going to win them games. It just needs to not lose them games.
It has enough guys to make plays.
Yeah. I think if this defense is strong enough to keep teams under, say, 27 points, this team's going to be competitive. But if they're giving up 4 or 5 touchdowns, it's going to be tough for Lawrence because he's going to get overly aggressive, and that's when the turnovers come.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting year for Jacksonville. I think we either see the jump or sort of regression and sort of, what they are is what they are. Let's go to the Titans next. I don't think either of us sort of know what they are or quite what they want to do. Honestly, I think this team can be a 9-win team and compete for this division, but I also think it's one of those that if things go badly early, they are one of the ones who will be like, well, we could get Caleb Williams. Let's shut this thing down.
I've been kind of confused. We got a new GM this past year, and he immediately goes out and trades up to get the first pick in the second round to draft Will Levis, a guy I'm not very big on.
I don't think they're very big on.
And I don't know. There's some confusing decisions here. Money's being spent in weird places.
It's just hard to understand.
Well, they won't take a path.
Yes,
There's like 3 paths they're trying to walk all at the same time. Are you going to rebuild? Are you going to go for a championship? What are you doing? And they're kind of in between on everything, and it's just making it into a big mess.
Coaching-wise,
which is unfortunate because I think Vrabel's one of the best coaches in the NFL.
I think that's where the problem lies too.
Well, he also wins more than what they're wanting him to win.
It's hard to sort of tank because if you give him any sort of talent, which this team has playmakers on a couple different levels on both sides of the ball, and they're going to sneak away and win games. It's not necessarily going to look all that fun to watch, but they'll win games, and that's where I'm saying, you know, you're in a crappy division where the only other team really is Jacksonville. They can contend for the division, but is it something you really want to do? Because then you're going in next year, once again, low first-round pick. I'm assuming Tannehill won't be back, but, you know, there's no telling. But I don't know if you walk into next season with a Will Levis or Malik Willis.
I think right now the plan is Will Levis. You know, I think their defense is going to be improved this year. Landry going out in the preseason was really tough last year because the combination of him and Simmons on that defensive line just really changes the dynamic on defense because it helps their coverage out when they're getting when they're getting that pass rush.
If they can get the pass rush from Landry and Simmons, the corners don't get as exposed, which is really their real problem.
Fulton's another year away from his knee back surgery that he had in college, and you know, they've still got the great leader in Byard at safety. Linebacker plays iffy.
I was going to say it's not exquisite, but it's not like the worst.
Landry's great, but he's more of a defensive end than a linebacker. But like I said, if they can generate that pass rush, Jeffrey Simmons is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. That'll help their defense. They're going to run the ball well. They've got Henry. They've got a couple other guys behind him that are good. I like Hopkins is going to help the offense, I think, because I think Burks struggled last year because he was the guy.
That's what I was going to say. It's sort of it's put up time for Burks. It's got to be his year because Hopkins is going to seal the coverage. It's got to be more than sort of preseason talk and showing cool videos of him running fast and making cool one-handed catches. It's got to translate into the game consistently.
Well, and Hopkins being out there will help him not get doubled as often, so I think that'll help. And Tannehill being out there, if he can stay healthy, I think he doesn't have as much. I don't even know what upside the other guys have. Like I said, I don't understand because neither one of those guys are flashy either. But Tannehill, if he's at his best, is a top 15, 20 quarterback in the league.
I think we go back to the Steelers. It's sort of what you'd want Pickett to be. Yeah. When Tannehill was probably at his best a couple years ago, I don't know if he could still reach that. He's a little older than you think, too.
Well, and the problem is their offensive play calling is questionable, in my opinion. First down, they have the highest first down run percentage of any team in the league. They know what's coming. They load the box. They stuff Henry. Then you get forced into a passing situation. So I think if their offensive play calling gets a little bit more dynamic, it could help them out. But now they have some better weapons this year, so that may help out as well.
Yeah, I think both of us are on sort of a wait and see.
Yeah, I think this team ceiling 9, 10 wins maybe. Floor, there's no telling. Well, it depends on how fast. If the rails go off, it could go way off.
I wonder, but it's a little like the Rams, where I think it would be hard to convince the coach to be like, we don't want to win. We'd like Caleb Williams.
And I know Vrabel is really close with ownership. Yeah. I think they involve him a lot in the GM decisions. I think he's happy with the way things are going, but he would be a highly sought-after coach if things went weird in Tennessee because he's a player's guy and he can win with scraps that he's proven in Tennessee. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Like you said, it's a good wait and see.
Yeah. Let's go to Indianapolis. I don't even know what this really is.
It's crazy to think that it was just 2 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? 2 years ago.
Well, I mean,
that
2 years
Luck
ago,
retired right before the season.
I mean, 2 years ago, it was Rivers playing Buffalo, and they had the ball going to win in Buffalo, and this is, I They don't need to tank because they have their quarterback of the future. I think we both like Richardson, but we're a little apprehensive. I think he could have used more seasoning.
Yeah, well, he's going to get the seasoning this year. He has a lot of growing, I think. It could be he's just got to keep his head up and power through this year and just keep going and just look at it week to week. This team, I don't think, has any playoff future this year. But if he can grow, that'll help them in the future.
I sort of see it like one of two ways. I'll pull back to one of your Titan favorites. It could go the Josh Allen way, where he's very similar in pretty much body type.
Then
speed,
all you do is start bringing in some weapons.
Or it can go the Jake Locker route, who also was built like a tank, could run, could pass, but it never worked.
Translated.
Never worked. And I think the college experience was a little more, Allen played 4 years at Wyoming. Yeah. Locker played that sort of 1.5 years at Washington, where I think it was sort of similar to what Richardson is. Now, granted, Locker got banged up, but I think there's a chance here where Richardson gets banged up. You bring that Eagles offensive coordinator in to be the head coach. I guarantee you he's going to be used like a battering ram here early, especially I'm assuming there isn't really a Jonathan Taylor involved. I mean, maybe yes, maybe no. I'm crossing that off, and you don't have a ton of weapons. I like Michael Pittman. That's a good, sort of NFL 2, low NFL 1 receiver. Other than that, there's not much dynamicism on this Colts offense. The line is sort of aged quicker than I think most people think. And same defensively.
The defense has lost a lot of weapons.
And honestly, right now, if you were looking at futures, I think the Texans have a better outlook than the Colts right now.
Yeah, I think the game plan here is to just, if they can just prevent Richardson from getting hurt, get him a lot of experience, and then start putting together new weapons for the future.
I think you keep Pittman around and sort of.
I think that's why they're hoping for picks for Taylor at this point. But I don't know what's going to happen.
Good luck at that. I think it'll be a very bad Colts year. Granted, we'll see what the coach does. It's an unknown there as well. I'm sort of in between here on the Texans. The quarterback scares me a little bit, but I think there are pieces here. I think defensively this could be a little bit of a nasty team to play. I love the coaching hire here. I don't know if I love his decision to choose the Texans over, all the teams, but they do have a lot of draft picks to sort of build this team up over the next handful of years. We'll see what C.J. Stroud can do. Not my favorite, but I think there's capabilities to be a solid NFL quarterback. I don't think they will be a top-tier team, but last year, even when they didn't play well, they were still a pain in the ass to play. I think this could be a pain in the ass team to play and still win. I think they could get into that 6-win range, maybe so, especially with the division.
I'm not so sure about that. I don't know how Stroud's going to do with just the lack of weapons they've got. Yeah. I don't like really any of the guys.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of handoffs. To Pierce.
and that may work out for them. And we just talked about the Colts are going to be very beatable. The Titans, we don't know what they're going to be. So we look at those division games as opportunities.
And they beat Jacksonville all the time.
They get the I think NFC South is one of their division as their cross conference division. So they got games against the Bucks. They got games against
Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina.
Basically everybody.
So there's winnable games there that you may not have to score 40 points to win. You could go out there and get 20 something and get a win. They just really. I'm not sure how they need to use Stroud because. I just don't know how explosive this offense is.
That's why I'm curious what they're going to do. They
may just ground and pound.
You shouldn't really look at last year because it's all different. They were pretty aggressive offensively at times last year, but they did have Cooks in there. But I like Pierce, and I think that's what it's. I think it's going to be a lot of ground and pound and a lot of nastiness.
And just tough-nosed defense.
And it's sort of a game that can remain tight and see if the other team makes a mistake or two. I like Will Anderson Jr. Stingley, their pick last year, I think is a pretty good pick. They're building pieces.
Yeah, they got a lot of draft picks for the next couple years.
I don't think they're ready, but I look at someone like the Colts, and I think they could contend for, worst team in the NFL. I look at this team, and I don't think they're going to be a good team, but I don't think they will be in that contention for worst team in the NFL. And they have no real reason to tank either. This time they have their quarterback.
Yeah.
They have, high-end defensive guys. They're about filling out weapons on the outside and a couple pieces here and there defensively. All right, so AFC South, you got a winner here. I think it's sort of between 1.5 teams.
Yeah, it pains me to do so, but the Jags are going to win this division again. Titans, depending on how it goes, might be able to compete for a wild card. But I'm interested to see what the Jags can do.
Yeah,
I think Ridley, before his issue, he was a top 10 wide receiver in the league.
The Falcons were still relevant when they were using him. I think people forget how good he was on those Falcons teams before he left.
Oh yeah, Jags.
Yeah, I'd probably go Jags, but I have a little bit more trust in the Titans, and I'm a little nervous. Jags sort of peaked out, but I could also see Jags make that step and jump into that pond of one of the top sort of teams in the AFC. All right, let's close it out with the AFC West. One team that pretty much is in the Super Bowl every year recently, and 3 teams that you have no earthly idea, I think, what you're going to get. We'll close with the Chiefs, so let's go Broncos first. Speaking of no idea what you're going to get.
Let's ride.
I think you'll get better football because the coaching upgrade from Melvin Hackett to Sean Payton is probably the greatest.
Well, the Hackett hire was just to, hopefully they could get Rodgers. They had to go to Wilson as their backup plan.
The Jets are about to find out what I'm interested in this team. Judy's already hurt, but we aren't getting much information there. He might be ready, he might not be ready, so I don't know how hard he is. They have skill guys. That's where this team is weird. Judy, Sutton, Mims, they have P. Ryan, they have Javonte Williams coming back from injury. The O-line, it's not the best in the NFL, but it's a solid unit. Quarterback might be a little bit of an issue. I don't know if you usually say that when you guarantee a quarterback $200 million, but I think that's where we have to start. Is this done, or do we get at least a sort of Sean Payton can cover over the Russell Wilson cracks here? Or do we get Jared Stidham, who got sort of a lot of money for a backup quarterback?
I have a little bit too much faith in Sean Payton to believe this is going to be a really bad team this year. He can scheme probably better than anybody in the NFL. He's got some, like you said, skill positions. But, he made wide receivers, he did have Drew Brees, but there were unknowns that went into New Orleans and made plays and got yardage directly as a result of his play calling. So I think we'll see some of that here. It'll be a more rushing-heavy attack.
I think so.
And then Dinkin and Duncan, which may help Russell get a little bit more confidence and be able to play better. I don't think he goes back to being, amazing.
No.
But we've seen with this defense and this run game on this team, you don't have to be amazing to win games.
Well, I think
you just have to not suck.
Yeah, I think the thing you ask is like to be Drew Brees towards the tail end there.
Yeah,
where
distribute.
Now you're talking about one of the most accurate passers ever. So, but get the ball, hit those quick short slants, be accurate with it, run the ball. They had Kamara and Ingram, and they have P. Ryan and Javonte. We'll see how healthy Javonte Williams is. If Javonte can come back, let's game 6 and be semi-healthy. I think that mix with P. Ryan and Williams really will help them. Defensively, it's a little bit hot and cold because, they sort of gave away a couple guys at the trade deadline last year. I wouldn't call them an elite defense, but I wouldn't call them a bad defense either. It's sort of it's good enough to work with. That Judy has to be healthy. If Judy and Sutton are healthy, I think they can move the ball. And like I said, I think wins above what last year's coach to this year's coach. A little Doug Peterson-esque in Jacksonville. I don't know if you quite get that many wins, but I certainly could see it. Because, I mean, you saw some bad Saints teams there towards the end that were able to win 10, 11 games.
Yeah, I think we're going to get in that 8-9 range, which is right at whether I think they're over-under at. I think it's like 7.5.
I believe so.
So it's right there, and I think we're going to see that maybe compete for a wild card, but there's some good teams in this AFC.
Yes. I think that's where, not necessarily this division. We'll get to the next one. The Los Angeles Chargers. This team looks very cool, as always, when you pull up the sort of depth chart and roster. Speaking of coaches that probably shouldn't be there, granted, they did bring in Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator, who I think is sitting there tapping his finger, waiting to take over this team.
Well, we saw what he did with Dak at Dallas, and I think Dallas is going to pay the price of losing him.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's a pretty good quarterbacks coach and play caller, and they're going to need it because I think this is a make or break year for Herbert.
I think it is now. The stat nerds love him, so I don't know if that's it. But Williams, Allen, Palmer out there, Eckler back there. They have a really solid offensive line. I mean, this team has what you want defensively. Bosa and Mack along the defensive end. Darwin James probably. I mean, they call him a safety. I don't quite know.
Well,
he's hybrid man all over the field.
I think with James and Mack and some of these guys, I think their window is on the tail end.
This is. They need to make the playoffs. That's what they haven't even made the playoffs. I think people don't, they made it last year. They blew that stupid game to Jacksonville, speaking of coaching. But I want to see this team dominate and not have to sneak in the last day of the playoffs and then blow a 24
But I mean,
lead.
Keenan Allen's been around forever.
Yeah, but speaking of staying healthy, Mike Williams has to stay healthy because I think that helps Keenan Allen because then he can get on that inside part of the slot, do what he does. Williams is that deep threat.
Can Eckler stay healthy?
But I think they have enough depth at running back. They usually seem to find. Maybe Kellen Moore can convince some sense and they don't go for 4th and 6s on their own 20. I don't know. This team has befuddled me for 3 years. There's a lot of talent always there, and
underachieve.
It just never seems to live up to said talent. I don't even know if that's all Herbert's fault. I'm not a huge fan of the coach, so the sooner Kellen Moore can take over, I think the better. But nonetheless, I this is sort of, it has to be the year, and I'm a little worried that the Broncos might be the one to sort of leapfrog them and, what do we say, push the Chiefs? I mean,
I don't know about push, but I mean,
hover around the Chiefs.
The thing is, with the AFC the way it is, if you want to pretty much guarantee that you get the wild card, you're going to have to get to 10.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know if 9 gets you in.
Yeah, I mean, we talked.
Look at the AFC East.
Yeah, we talked about, the AFC North, where all 4 teams are contenders.
Yeah.
You look at the AFC East.
There's 3.
There's 3, and New England might
Can't
be.
count them out.
Yeah, solid as well. You look at the AFC South. You can't tell me Tennessee isn't going to at least contend for a wild card spot. Same with Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of teams aiming for a small amount of spots. So I don't think the Chargers can do their thing where they slow start and lose a handful of games they shouldn't. Let's switch things over to the last team in here, and the Las Vegas Raiders. I do think this team will be terrible.
Yeah.
Speaking of coaches I don't like, this would be one. For some reason, they traded for Jimmy G. Devontae Adams is still there. That's a plus, but I feel like that's a season trade waiting to happen.
Yeah, there is no way that guy wants to be here.
Some contending team. Somehow Josh McDaniels turned Hunter Renfrow into a guy who caught 110 passes into one that caught 30. Jacobs is unhappy. Darren Waller has already abandoned ship and gone. Defensively, other than Max Crosby, they're still a sieve. Their line was atrocious and tried to kill Derek Carr last year.
Yeah.
I don't know what good to say other than this team has Devontae Adams.
Well, and how long is it before Garoppolo gets hurt again?
Yeah.
He's proven he
With
always
that line,
always gets hurt. This is a disaster waiting to happen. And we could be looking at full rebuild soon in Las Vegas.
I know they gave the coach a lot of money and a long contract, but
I don't understand that either.
yeah,
But
I can't foresee, which I think this could be one of those worst teams. This could be one of them that is in the 3-4 win mark if things go badly, especially if I love how we all love Aiden O'Connell in the preseason, but both you and I watched him in college numerous times. He's not going to be the second coming.
Yeah.
Might be okay, might not be all that much of a drop-off from Jimmy G, but it's not going to be good.
No.
If you have Jacobs and Adams, you're at least going to be able to do a little on offense, but I think this could be bad, and I wonder how quick they end the season to go after Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and like you said, there's only maybe 2 or 3 teams that I see this team could be potentially better than in the league, and if it means going and getting the next hot quarterback, there could be some competition.
Yeah, I feel a little bad for Max Crosby, though. That guy works his ass off for a terrible defense. All right, let's go to the Chiefs here, Super Bowl champs. They lose a couple of receivers. Granted, 2 days ago we would have been a little bit different with our preview. The Kelsey injury puts things a little bit weird, especially I think. I don't want to say this receiving core is bad. I think unproven. You don't know what you're getting out of Sky Moore. No one has known what they're getting out of Kadarius Toney for his whole life, basically. You might get really, really good. You also might get a 0-catch day and a tantrum on the sideline.
I think the biggest concern is through all these wide receiver changes they've had the last 3 years, there's always been at least one guy that is good enough to be a wide receiver 1. And I'm not sure if they've got that standout guy this year. And I'm worried about their defense. How long is Christmas holdout going to be? Because
he says week 8. I feel like it might be
I've seen stats where last year on the field, off the field, on the field they're a top 10 defense.
Yes.
When he's off the field, they're near the bottom.
Is their defense. Snead was really, really good, and Bolton. They made some good defensive draft picks last year, but they do need Chris Jones in there.
Jones, I said Smith.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
The Kelsey thing, if Kelsey's healthy, they'll be fine.
He's wide receiver 1 if he's healthy.
I don't think they'll rush him back, so maybe there's a little bit of a slow start, especially if there's some sort of weird structural thing with the knee. We don't know anything right now.
I've actually been eyeballing this and looking at it in fantasy. Look at a lot of production from Pacheco and McKinnon at the running back position, especially in the receiving game.
Well, the other thing is, the one, maybe Sean Payton is the other. Andy Reid can turn a lot of very bad receivers into receivers that look very good. If you go look at a handful of those Eagle teams that he had with Donovan McNabb, there are some receivers whose names you will not know who had a lot of catches. Todd Pinkston comes to mind. He can do things that you wouldn't do, but one, they need the healthy Kelsey. If it is like an ACL tear or something, I drop them down a little bit.
If Kelsey's out, the Chargers have a very good shot at winning this
now,
division.
I think, Chiefs still can probably work themselves into
Oh, yeah.
a playoff spot. Andy Reid, Mahomes, you're pretty much fine, especially if Chris Jones comes back. But if Kelsey's hurt bad, I think Super Bowl, like, contender, which they've been for 5 years now, sort of falls off. Unless, Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore turns into, that elite receiver. So, AFC West, do you have a winner?
It's got to be the Chiefs.
Can you say anything?
It's got to be the Chiefs. I mean,
yeah. We don't take against Mahomes and Andy Reid here. Kansas City Chiefs in this division. Yeah. All right. That's
all our previews.
All our previews. We just get to talk sports now and not the theory of sports. That'll be fun. Be sure to like and subscribe and watch all our shows, especially our NFL Futures show, which will be up as well. Our Winning Daily with our picks. Dynamite David's will be out in the next couple days. Mine will be out as well in the next couple days. You'll want to catch all that action for a full slate of football. Probably won't have any soccer picks. I don't think we're going to do some random national team games. I might take a peek, but I don't know. I told him to put all his money on who's ever playing Gibraltar, so maybe he throws that out there, but nonetheless, all our football picks. Good week to have the international break in soccer. Yeah. Gets us to balance it out with a little college football and NFL. Now, next week, it might be a little...
At least the previews are out of the way now, so that gives us a little bit more time.
All right, be sure to like and subscribe. Look for that NFL Futures show. That's our show, and we're out.
This is Stapleton Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.